Okay, we'll go through order 13. After the Rebbe brings here that the idea which is Kedem mitzvah, the idea of Kedem mitzvah is you say idea klolus asadan ebishter. Without knowing, it means that there's someone that everything's dependent on, not what type of mitzvah is the ebishter. There's someone which, whenever you need something, you turn to him, and he's the one that's whatever they say. The Nashim, the Alter says the Nashim Tinekis, that they say Baruch Hashem, they're not being mitzayir by themselves. It's not that their seichel is developed and they're being mitzayir someone that has a certain definition, or a certain, he's great, he's not great. There's a someone that on him is dependent everything. Not because, why is everything dependent? There's no why. Not that they classify this mitzvah as someone that has the tchunis of everything being totally by. There's someone that he's the absolute being, that everything you need, you turn to him. But this someone has no touch. That's the idea called the Shesh Malakah. And then there's the idea of pratis, that a person understands already more pratim when you get to what type of being is Elokus. It's Mechuyev Mitzias, and the Eibishter in Amiti, everything is dependent on him. So the Rebbe brings here that the idea Rishon, so Pashas say the idea Shni is a much greater idea. The first one is just a general, it's a very general, that there is an absolute being. There is someone that everything's about, that everything's about him. You always turn to him whenever we're in need, but you have no clear understanding of what are the criteria in Andreverte, which causes such a being to have this absolute quality. So it's the idea klolus, sheyesh malakah. Masha'ik, the idea of brothers, you know already pratim about him. You know there's Mechuyev Mitzias, you know that he's Ein Sof, he's Tavas HaShleima, so shidna pratim. So them zog the Rebbe das, and ishtazi. So the hechrich, so to speak, is because it's the fact that you're being mizvayin in pratim. The siba why you're being mizvayin in pratim is because in other words, what's a yid without a mitzvah? Alfas or tut is valzeit Rebbe Shegezin. The Rambam is being mitzvah a yid that he doesn't. It's not that we're by us already. So we already have seichel. So we're already mitzvah the musik of alakus according to the way our seichel already gets into the picture. The Rebbe is being mitzvah a yid. First, there's the idea klolus that is the sheyesh malakah. What's the greatest done, Eibishter? And then there is, what's the next step that he's going to do? Whatever the Eibishter tells him, that's what he's going to do. So the Siba why he's being misbeinin is because the Eibishter him gehasen to misbeinin. Why does he have to obey what the Eibishter says? Because he knows that there's an Eibishter. Once he knows there's an Eibishter, and this Eibishter that he knows, the idea Rishena, he knows that he has to obey whatever the Eibishter says. So the Siba why he's being misbeinin is the concept of a lakus that he had by Eif and clothing. So that's the Siba which brought that he's being misbeinin in clothing. And the klal is that the davar hagerim is higher than the davar which stems from the davar hagerim. The siba is higher than the mesud. I don't know if that's a klal, but what's the hechich here? That's what the Rebbe says. That's the fact that he's being misberin in pratim is because you have to obey what the Eibishter says. Which Eibishter? What's the concept of mitzvah that he has? The idea called the sheyesh malakah. And that's the one that is makabel el malach shamayim. When eret geistem, that's charayin tracht is a charayin. But his mitzvah, his absolute being, which is the one that causes him to function, is always going to be the mitzvah, the one that the idea klal is sheyesh malakah. So there, azevi in pashtus, the siba why you get on him trachten is the concept of the mitzvah by him, is the klal, the yesh malakah, the idea klal is. So that's taka inamiti, that is taka siba, that's the mocker for the whole hemshah. Azevi does the Rebbe's head, and the beard is because the idea klal is val atzmos is nirigash. Atzmos is higher than any. It is higher than saying it is beyond any description at all. It's the mahus ha'atzmus without any additional taich, and that mahus, their metzias ha'atzmus is nirgash ba'ayid. That's why the concept of a lakus doesn't need a taich. After shamak taich. That's what there is mitzayim. What Alter says in Tanya in Terei Hamarhug is gas. L'chein gam tinekis yedim sheyesh malakah. That means that there's no other concept. That the concept has no pirush. It's not even a concept. The someone that a yid believes in, the nashim ami artist tinekis, has no definition. Why? Because the Eibush has no definition, and that emes is nirgash. The seichel adam kenesh tzukim says azach. Okay, so the Rebbe brings in order 13. The Barbanel said that the yidiyah rishayna manasolokus is a very vague yidiyah. The mitzvah is als wissen besser. Tzemach tzedek teaches two ways, by the way. The mitzvah of leida sheyesh malakah. One, if you should know pratim about him. And the second ifin is, it's not enough to know abstractly there's an Eibishter, but it should have a ashpa in your life. Emunah, he attaches meloshin, emunas eimen. Eimen means that you You train yourself to be in touch with it. So the idea, which is neveh mitzad the mitzvah, is a stronger idea, a more deeper idea, the idea that you have mitzad the munah. So after in Parshas Lashon Rabbanel Shalom Chim Lashon Tzom Tzedek Mashma Lehevich, shemunah shaleh bo atzibe inali sisem munah shalifnei atzibe. So Shloime zel b'nin hagiluim. Ameret legabi the iliv ha'flav v'lokos. Where is nirgash more? The reichkeit of v'lokos, his greatness, his shleimus. That avada in the idea klal sheyesh malakah. The whole concept of greatness you're not thinking about. It's David is not an exalted being. There is a someone which everything is dependent on him. With this someone, we didn't think yet what nature of what's the nature of this someone. But Garsh gets happening then. So he has no idea that Eli v'yeker that flow because there's no flow, there's no Eli. So the Gabi Giluyim haste the milas in that flow of Elukus. That's in the Giluyim Savad in that aspect. So Buher Tzachmer that flow and that arcade that's like in the Yiddish Lacher at Sibi. Kim Shemon Shulp and Sibi like the Kosh Shemon Kaplan Lili Kosh Shulp Pratim had we dizu and Negosh Eli that flow the Elukus. After became Kiva the whole gather of Eli that flow. I mean the whole concept. The whole category of Ili V'Aflo, nicht in dem besteht was Atzmos is. That's in his expressions, how he expresses himself. What he, Oliver Tzeni to also have Midas, to also be a Bamayla. Nicht in dem besteht Mechusa Imi. Mashiach Atzmos is, Barech Hari Adra, V'Hidiyah Klolos, Sheyesh Alaka, Elaka Stam Blishum Tir Shel Ili V'Aflo, Yediyah Zu Davkei B'Atzmos is Barech. I am Tereir, V'Yere Yidal B'Beis. The Rebbe says it as if, V'Lochim. The Rebbe is saying, Dafke Darten is idea in others. The Rebbe doesn't tell it is, since the Tzimtzum is not an urge, just a Maamar, and the Maamar is Bizgalo, so Lachain, also Tinekis Yedim Sheshem Alaka. The Rebbe is kvetching here, not Lachain Tinekis. Dafke in the idea is that Tinekis on Afla, Darten Herzachatzis. When someone grows up, and if station already, Iluyim Vaflois of Alakus, so he takes the concept of Alakus as the most exalted being, as a Metzias Achi Nailis, Metzias Achi Shloime. So in them herzach nicht the Indian Atzmos is nothing to do with Giluyim, just him himself, the Eibishter himself. Only him. It's a very important word. Just the Eibishter himself. What type of reality? However way he wants to be. There's no form at all. Not beyond form and not form. We're using beyond also. There's only him himself. The word only is also wrong. There's the Eibishter. Was geht sein, wer will, als wird sein. There's no concept of Ili V'Aflo. And thus, that in him, unkin shum taichi. Not mufshit, not mitzuyer, not this, not even the Ma'alef Shlos Kolaterim. There's no above the Atzma Shlos Kolaterim. No inyanim. There's the Eibishter himself. That's thus herzach by the Da'zatinik. And that's the idea that a Yid has, because the Rebbe is being inside a Yid, he can be a Yid and a Vaxen a Yid. But he does what it says in Shchonar. If Shchonar didn't say to use his mind, if Shchonar didn't give him a tzivit to think about, to understand, so he never thought part about the Eibishter. He only has the Eibishter the way he's Mekabel Mitzad Munah. So Mitzad Munah, the Eibishter is Yeshem Alakah, unattached. Yeah, this is a pashtin. Okay. Oh, so we learn Arda 14 now, yeah? This is an important point. So the Rebbe says in the Pnim, the Rebbe read drei Sachen in the Pnim. The Rebbe read ein Sach, that the Atmis of Elkus B'chal Pashtet Neshomaylis. Then the Rebbe, even when he's speaking about Oliver saying that there should be the Inyan Hagilui. Oliver, the Eibishter is not mugdar, that he's mufshit from Iris. He's not defined by anything. And Oliver said that there should be Inyan of Gilui. There should be that Elukus should be about Maya. I'm saying it's not a davar of Zman, but Oliver, the kavanah of Elukus is that there should be Inyan of Ein Sof and Iluyim V'Aflois. Within the Milas V'Aflois of Elukus, there's two dargas. There is the Ili V'Aflo, Al Pi Seichel, what's considered ultimate Ili V'Aflo. Al Pi Gidra Seichel, what's considered the most greatest and the most complete reality. Al Pi Seichel. And then there's the Ili V'Aflo, which is higher than the Gidra Seichel. And das steht in Chassidus lesson. That's not a Chiddush of the Hadran. Das steht in Chassidus that there is Maamar Kalam and Seva Kalam. There is a Lukus, the way the Indian of the Eibishter's the way is Mislabish and Kevin. And we could have a certain tfis in the Eibishter's Ma'ila. The ultimate Shleimas Habriya is that's the Eses Firis and Bleakvul. So there's the way the Eibishter Oliver said it to be Mitzumtzu and Eses Firis. And there's the Lukus Batzmusi. And it's of K'meshu Batzmusi, which lays Moshav higher than Tfisa. But the Rebbe brings here 2 points that the Adgosha here is. First of all, that since you say that the Gidra Seichel are not Muchra, and even in Yom HaShabbat Seichel, Ken is an Anders, that's all was created that way. But Be'etzem Ken Zach exists, not Mitzad Atzmos. Be'etzem nothing exists. So the Rebbe is saying over here is that the fact that Al Piseichel, any inyan Al Piseichel, it's muchrach that a mitzvah is Shloime, or that a mitzvah is Shloime should be a kulam who any tzarech l'shum who any tzarech to l'zlazim kulam tzarech mitzvah elav, but seichel zabriya. And the same way we understand that the fact that 1 + 1 = 2. The Rashba, that there's no nimnois b'chei kabeira, the fact that chayis agreses are kenesh rein in a kleine zar. A besichel is kenesh rein anders. A pill cannot go into kupa demach. It's not possible that a big thing should stay big and be in a tiny little hole. It's not possible. But seichel was created. The Eibusher could have created a punkt fakert. Nothing has to be. So I'll dare say even those gedorim of seichel, by us it's even, but the Rebbe is saying it b'pshittis. Even those seichel is mechayiv, how lakus has to be, that's also not muchrach. So seichel is mechayiv that a mitzvah that an Eibusher has to be a mechayiv mitzvah. Any gedorim has to be in amiti. Sure, and the zolase is mitzvah elav. That's a seichel. Seichel was created. So it can't say punkt fakert. So the Eibusher created Gidra Seichel. The Eibusher created Rabbi Seichel Lukus Dar Zan Azam Yitzar Zah. It's Kenner Zain Anders that the Eibusher should be a Metzias which Kulam Tzrichem Elav Hu Ein Yitzarech Lizulasim. But the Eibusher could have created Seichel otherwise. Lepoil Oliver said to create Gidra Seichel on this Eifen, and that he should and the Eibusher should be a Shalim Al Pi Seichel. So Oliver said so that's the way it is. But it's not that the Etzem is Shmucher Chazir. That's the so. I feel of the Rebbe is not speaking about atzvus yet. We're speaking even when they get to Inyanim of Gelim. I feel Inyanim of Milas Vafles. Let's say there's in of Chacham. The Rebbe is going to speak in the heart when they get to Yediyah. So Yediyah is a certain Ilui. The Eibusher is a Yediyah Akeh. So there is Yediyah the way it is Al Pi Seichel. The Gedra Yediyah the way it's Mechuyev Al Pi Seichel the Gedra Yediyah. And the fact that the Eibusher is a Yediyah the way Seichel is Mechayev, how Lukus is a Yediyah. It's one type of Yediyah. But then there's the Shleimus of Yediyah the way it is mitzad the Erin Sof Shalifnet. The way the Eibusher is the way it is mitzad the inyan and the way they're higher than seichel, and then the mile of yediyah doesn't have the gdarim of seichel. Before we're speaking about asvus is not about the inyan of mile altogether. I feel I'm in mile is gufa, but we're saying first of all we're saying there's the inyan of yili bafla. All of us saying there should be inyan of milas in other words, and then there is not standard inyan of milas, but milas help seichel. So in every mile, the Rebbe is going to touch over here when you get to Yediyah. But in every mile, so there's the mile the way it is in Erin Sof, Shalif Netzis, Shalem Mitzad Gidra Seichel. And there is the mile the way it is inside Gidra Seichel. So we get a Madavar Azul. It's not just a question. Let me send the order and then we'll see the... Okay. Pizzi, Shloime, Meshkos of HaRambam, the Idin HaShaila, the Yediyah B'chira. So the Rambam asked the Shaila, how could they say the Eibusher knows everything? And B'yachadim Zeh, everything is by choice. So the Rambam says the Tshuvas Shaila Zu are Ruchem Eretz Vida. Ve'she'im banu keach leida heich yeda HaKadosh Baruch Hu kol habrim b'amayis. The Rambam says Mekanis Shverstein. That's the simple reading the Rambam is in Mekanis Shverstein. And the Ravid is fragt af Rambam if manavshach. If you're anyway not going to explain it, so why were you Meir Rashayla? Made a whole question and then he's not Masber anyway. So but that's the Rebbe has a separate beer. What the Rambam means when the Rambam says what's the machlekes the Rambam and the Ravid? That the Ravid Tanis and the Rambam, if anyway you're not explaining it, why did you have to be Meir the Kasha? The Sikh and Chilik Mandal. They brought in the Marokans. Anyway, that's not negate what the Rebbe means over here. The Rebbe is read that say this up. So the Rambam says that this Kasha, how to say reconcile the state between Yediyah and Bchira is Zera Shveda Shayla. This is like the Rambam. Ein banu keach leida heich yeda HaKadosh Baruch Hu kol habroi b'amayis. Zera Shveda Shayla. So l'chura tomua that's l'chura this b'chan nishkin Shayla, and the way the Rishem the son brings the Rishem the Ram al Moshinu, Ram al Moshninu, Poshta Teretz. There's not even a Shayla b'chal b'chal Shayla. What's the Shayla b'chal? Why is Yediyah B'chira question? There's two Shaylas, but they're speaking about Yediyah B'chira. There's one Shayla is when they get Kol Asher Chofetz Hashem Asa. Anything that happens is a result of the Eibusher's will, and no one has any control to do anything outside of the Eibusher. So if you say a person has B'chira, so you're saying someone else has control. The Eibusher Kabiyach is not in control of what we're doing. We have the full liberty to do the way we want. We choose. That's one other. That's not what the Rebbe is discussing here. The Shayla of Hashgacha, or the Eibusher's Balabatishkeit versus our B'chira. That's not what the Rebbe is discussing. The Rebbe is discussing the Shayla. The Shayla is Yediyah B'chira. So when is Yediyah B'chira Shayla? The Rambam says the question of Yediyah B'chira, it's Ein Banu Keach Leida. How the Eibusher knows everything, even though we're full, we have the full B'chavshiyus to be Be'echad the way we want. What's the Shayla? So when is it a Shayla? See, in Pashas Advarim, like saying this mashal, in the mashal echet, but you're saying that you have Lamashal. There's two ways of knowing a future, let's say. If you have one way, you say, of Makim, someone is standing in this room, and he sees not this room, someone's in a Zimmer and he sees a fire. So you could, if there's a fire here, he knows that it's 10 miles further, 5 miles further, there's a wood, and he sees that the fire is spreading, so he can already predict that there's going to be in Yena Platz, there's going to be a Shevat. That's one way of knowing the future. How does he know the future? He doesn't see the future. He sees now. But he can predict already from what he sees now. If there's a fire, the fire spreads. According to the Chukei Teva, this and this and this is going to happen. B'meili, he knows the future because he can already predict what's going to happen based on what he's seeing here. That's one way of knowing the future, or knowing what's happening in a later area. And there's another way. The reason why you know what's happening further is because you see what's happening further. The reason why I'm able to see what's going on in that room is not because I see what's going on here and I can predict what's happening in the next room. I see what's happening there. So if I see what's happening there, so Hadran, I'm going to get this one. You have two different things. The Eibishter Veis, alles was geht sein. It didn't happen yet. He knows everything that's going to be. So how does the Eibishter know what's going to be? So one way is, the reality that exists now is the present. But you can already predict, if you know Chukei Teva, you know how the world works, you can already predict what's going to be in 1,000 years from now. Because you know that if we we created a world with animals and chves and all the different natures of things, so it's already, if you know how everything works and what exists, Shloime, so you can already predict alles was geht sein. So if the fact that Eibishter knows everything is because of this type of idea, then Bchira is a stila to that. Bchira means that nothing is predictable. Where the fact that a person behaves a certain way is not a result of, it's not a cause and effect result. Because he was born kach v'kach, as a result of the fact that he's born kach v'kach, therefore his behavior is mechayev kach v'kach. Bchira means that a person has free choice to decide how to behave, not based on his nature. You can't predict if the reason why we're behaving this way is a result of because we're azat teva we have. So if the fact that we behave this way is because we have a certain teva, so you could predict for us how we're going to behave. If someone knows well the tchunas of this nefesh amluvish begov zeh, he can already predict everything that he's going to do. Bchira means that a person is not defined by a certain distinct mentality that he has. And you can make decisions, you have free choice to decide the way you want to behave. This is a push, but that's the klal of Bchira. So when is idea still at the Bchira? If the fact that the Eibishter knows what's going to be is because we have the present, but the reason why he knows the future is because he already erased out was gefinzach behavior with the whole tachas ha'im. But mainly he can already predict everything that's going to be. That's a still at the same Bchira. But the Rambam Mishnina says that there's no shaylach atchila the fact the Eibishter is idea with Bchira, because the Eibishter knows that the gabeima over va'asid, the Eibishter is higher than Zman. So for him, he already sees the future. We did it already. Means the fact that we did this is because we decided the chira chavshis to do kach v'kach. How does the Eibishter? We don't understand how the Malam and Azman works. But the future happened already. He sees the future. The same way you can have someone in Makim that I'm able to see what's going on in the next room. So the Eibishter can see what's going to happen in 10 years from now. But in 10 years from now, why does he know? How does the Eibishter know that this and this is going to happen? Because my decision already took place. But the reason why it happened is because I decided. So why is it with what is the idea still at the Bchira? What's that Zagreis Shayla? L'chura it's a davar pasha. There's no Shayla Chatchila. The Indian of Kol HaShachavetz Hashem also the Eibishter is balabat l'shkayt and Bchira. That's a different question. The Rambam speaks about it also. The Rambam speaks l'chura if Kol HaShachavetz Hashem also. So how is it shaykh to? In other words, the Eibishter has full control of everything that happens in the world. So how is it shaykh to say that a person has Bchira and then the Eibishter does not have full control? Because that means that certain things are totally in what we decide to do. This is ain shaykh. The Rebbe that the nishda shaykh, and the Rambam speaks about that somewhere else. I mean, behem shechat varm there, but anacha shaykh. The Rebbe der shaykh. The Rambam says in Nashal the Bchira that ein banukech leida heichiyah that Kadosh Baruch Hu kol haburim v'amaisim and hagan that there's Bchira chofshis. So he says l'chura tamuar. Remove him the pashtus. Should be idea when there's knowledge of a certain noise of a davar, ain't a idea sibala davar. The fact that the thing happens not because I know, because the Eibishter knows it, therefore it happened. Then it's still at the Bchira. If my idea caused the thing to happen, because the Eibishter knows that this and this happened, the fire governs it. Then it's a still. So the Eibishter is not. Once he knows it, we can't choose otherwise. With everything fakir, a idea mesubeves mea davar. But what's based on the See, how does the Eibishter know if it didn't happen yet? But the Eibishter is higher than Zman, so it happened already. He sees the future. Not it happened already. He sees the future. ואיסי דבר גם הלכו לבן אין ידיעה הקדוש ברוך הוא. דמה שידע גם העשת ביס, ופני שלגבי יסברך ישני כבר אדם. מכיוון שלפון יסברך אין קדימה ואיחור שאלה בחלק הזמן. So mele l'chore the shayla hitz chashtam b'chol. Val pizeh hakushya madua hayidiyah eina machrach yisab b'chira mei kara leika. So nishtaz ha-shayla. Mikiva shmash hu yizbarach yidiyah mikedem hech yivchara adam. Hu pnei shalagabe is a letter the Rebbe. Barichus Deila. Where's the letter? A ganze brief. The Rebbe is netzayer as that if it's a double pasha that if someone, that the yidiyah is not machriach, that the Rebbe speaks a different nekudah. That the fact that you know doesn't make it happen. But the Rebbe has to do a whole mashal that you... Huh?
Yeah, Evan.
What does it say? What does it say over there?
The fact that the stone is going to fall, your idea from the fact that the
Was a mashpia. So the Rebbe speaking that he is a mashpia. But there the word is how do you know because you're predicting already what's going to be. Then it's a still to the
Don't forget, the word is that your idea comes from the stone falling.
That's what the Rebbe says then?
Yeah, that's what I remember.
But the Rebbe wants to bring out the idea is not mashpia on the mitzvahs. The fact that someone knows didn't cause anything. But punkt the dugma there, if the fact that the Eibusher knows everything is because the same with the chaykat, I know for a fact that if someone throws a stone, I know for a fact that it's going to fall. So the Eibusher knows for a fact that we're going to chveis if there's going to be a yummy ice cream and the chveis at zweiter zach. For sure this person is going to do that kach. He knows it because he knows the person. Then that's shayla b'chira. So the Rebbe is saying it. The Rebbe is not saying it this lashon. The word nish tasei the pshat. The Eibusher knows because however the guy he's higher than Zman. But Mela he already sees the fact that we chose to eat ice cream. Then something else. The Rebbe's in that letter more different part. That the mind of the idea is not mashpia. It's not chazak. That's more the point of this letter.
By the way.
Yeah?
Just an interesting point.
Yeah. Why are you sharing an interesting point? Bikesh with what? Bikesh with this? Yeah. You want us to take the video? Continue on.
In Torah
Yeah.
is a Maamar, the Hadran.
Yeah, the Rebbe quotes the Maamar.
Okay, so over there it seems to imply the opposite. That
We're going to see the Rebbe quotes the Maamar. The Rebbe quotes the Maamar. It's quoted here. At the end of the V'ayin b'tere'er v'yerut. That's Vav Aleph. That's the Maamar. You're Mechaber.
So over there it implies that the idea is actually causing.
Midbalzen. So this is so Pizza. Why is it a kasha b'chol? The Rebbe Shaila is why is it a kasha b'chol? But Pizza, the Rebbe puts a kushya in exclamation marks. It's not kushya b'chol. A Pizza kushya madua yidei inem chayach zabchira meikara leiken shtaz hashayim. Kiven shmashu yizbarach yidei mikaydem hech yivchara adam v'nishal gabei yizbarach chayesek v'nabchira. We don't have what's the pshat the Eibush is higher than Zman. But the Gabi the Eibush is shigevem v'sigevem shpeter. Hariz a mamish k'mei yidei ba'ach labchira. What's the chadash? The Konvor calls it Baruch Medrash Shmuel for the Sechta Office. That's a kilt sofi. That's where they tesis yomtiv. And the Medrash Shmuel, the bigger riches, I think is that Mishnah. But kilt sofi v'rashus nesuna. So the Mishnah is one of the pshatim is a kilt sofi. The Eibush already say veis fareis aslos kizayin. And then a second later you say v'rashus nesuna that a person has bchira to choose the way he wants. It's mamish. Tesis yomtiv is ma'idich and the Rambam Mashin. It's not a stira. The Eibush already knows because he's higher than Zman. But the fact that it happened because we chose it to happen. So why does the Rambam say that it's a kasha? So le'idach v'lama kosav HaRambam sheshuv ha'shayla l'zor ruchem eretz midas tzera tifinin haramim as I say haramim hararim amukim ein banu keach le'idach le'idach b'im yesh nisvar ha'shila this is tiris anam v'akor v'tzor chleim she svar pshuta shelchem lehus HaRambam lehesef hezber ba'kushya didiyu b'chira heich lamad HaRambam shenina svar azur. So them zot Rama, the Rebbe is saying that the Shloime Rabbi Yehuda is klal hanal shayidiyah misubebes me'ad. What's the gather of yidiyah? What is knowledge? Knowledge means I know a fact. I know an object. Not so the knowledge comes after the object. This klal is a klal piseichel. A pigidra seichel. Mikivan shui is barach in. What's the Rebbe saying before in the plane? The Eibush we're read. I feel I'm read wegen meilas or shlemet wegen atzmos. Shleimus and Yonim of Ilu Yishleimus and Alakus. Ilu Yishleimus of Alakus is not Mugdar and Seichel. The Eibush created Gidra Seichel. And created what's considered Mailas Al Seichel. And Oliver said Letzamtzim is made to be, and to be, should be a Shalim Al Seichel. And he should have the functionality of Seichel. That's a Tzimtzum, Oliver saying. But mitzadatzmei, on a tzimtzum, on ratzon al tzimtzum, Oliver saying that there should be these iluyim not the way they are mitzad tzimtzum, the way they are mitzadatzmei. Mitzadatzmei, so it's the in of idea has no touch, has no agdar. It's higher than so. Kirish Rein Mugdim Gidra Seichel. Hadi Diosi is Barich Limit to the Davar Shideh. Kim Shideh Mesadatzman. The idea, and when you say the Ma'al, the Eibush is Yedea, Erves. And forget, in that Darge, there's no Dorim of Sibu Mesubah. While Erves, the far Vertas. The idea is that Gidra Seichel, the idea is Mesubah from the Davar Shideh. Masha'enkel the Ma'al Gidra Seichel is forget. The Eibush is Yedea, that's the Indian. He's Yedea Mesadatzman. Mitzad the Shloime Shel Ma'al Me'aseichel, there's the Eibush there. Und Erves. For the sake of his shleimus, he's there. The reality is because he knows. How does that work? As he does. Mitzad the shleimus shalamal, the Rebbe is speaking of Ili Vaflo, that the Eibush is Yedea because he's the Yedea, not that there's a concept which he's in knowledge of that concept. The Eibush is Yedea, it's his shleimus, and this Yedea, the Eibush Yedea is Ein Sof, because he's Yedea that way. It the Mitzvah is Echazeh. Because the Eibish's idea is Ein Sof. But not that the idea is Neveh Mitzad HaMais. V'rak la'achir shetzimtzum mitzad HaKaviyachol Gidra Seichel and the idea zu shel achir tzimtzum misubeh b'smei HaDover. Eshkom ki gam b'china zu hu yedea sa'asad liyis kolfon v'yis barach en k'liv v'yichur kanal. The Rebbe is saying that the Rambam sounds like two things. First of all, it's a Dover Pashut that the Eibush is not Mugdar in Gidra Seichel. So the Rambam doesn't have to bavarnit b'chol. It doesn't have to touch us that the Eibish's idea is a idea which is not Neveh mitzad the Mesubah. And the idea, forget there the Mitzvah stems from the idea. The Eibush is a idea because he's a idea, not worker from anything. The Rebbe doesn't touch us what's the hezbollah. But mitzad shleimus ha'ilui, any Indian is not the elokus is the shleimus ha'mayla. The bleak Maila is that it's not dependent on anything. Any ili which the shleimus is dependent on the topic, that's not yediyah and tachas ein sof. Tachas ein sof is that the yediyah is because he's a yediyah. Rebbe says in a few places this word. I'm saying what's the hechrich? What's the word? That the idea shel malim aseichel is an eifin that the facts stem from the fact that he knows. If it's malim gidra aseichel, so then maybe also there's the mesubah is the sibah comes from the mesubah. I'm saying what's the Rebbe is saying here is that there's the Indian of idea shel malim aseichel, and the idea shel malim aseichel, and there in that darge the Eibusher's idea, the idea is the mitzvah stems from the idea and not fakir. This the Rebbe read this not the chaplas with this word that the Madi you say that everything is a word in him. So v'ayim terei v'yer Rabbi Neda Soma Dastat Hashem should be the B'chinas Delil. V'piz Shloime HaRambam Sheninu Medar B'in Idea Shel Achratzin, so Mashiach HaRambam Medar B'in Idea Shel Lifnetzin. And the Rebbe sagt the Rambam is Meramas. This in it that every Ilian Shleimus. There's the way it is Mitzad Lifnetzin, so Mishalei Al Pi Seichel. The Rambam is Meramas it in the Sifrei Rambam. Because first of all, the Rebbe says Rambam is Meramas it in Halacha Beis. And the Rambam says that bringing rice. What's that bringing rice? If a lukus is muchrich in the Chreichem of Seichel, so what's that for bringing a rice? The Eibusher is emes. Pasuk says the Eibusher is true. Seichel says the Eibusher is true. Because so the Rambam alone tells you that the Eibusher is not muchrich in Seichel. So it's not muchrich in Seichel. So the Eibusher is ideal also not muchrich in Seichel. If the idea is a shleimus ain't safe, idea ba'efin of ain't safe is that his idea is not dependent on anything else. He's there because he's there. This word that if it's a idea which is ain't safe, then that idea, a mitzvah idea of ain't safe is not. It's not that it's not mitzad the davar she yidea, but it's because he's a idea ba'etzem. So that's das darf man verstehen, but that's this word. It says we get the coming young in this. Das darf man verstehen. But the part of the problem is that in a lukus mitzadatz is not working. A lukus mitzadatz may onke mitzat zweiten davon onke mitzat bart nesu. I'm saying the first pshat. To say that with onke mitzat zweiten, that's a vart nesu. But if all are saying to be idea, so there's idea. And with that, so he's the idea. Why is the idea? Because the Eibusher is the idea. He said that he's the idea. So the fact that the Eibusher knows is because the fact that these things happen is a result of the fact that he knows. Because he knows Vertazit. And his idea is Ein Sof. Eiber Vesa Zei Vertazit. That's fakir. So the Shaila Eiber Zei is, so then it's still at the Bchir. The Rebbe doesn't give the answer of the but just one word. I'm not saying the answer. The Rebbe is a Sikha. The Rebbe is Mazur Pshat. I'm just saying one word. The Rebbe said in the Sikhas, not Mamish when you get to the scene, when you get to the word of that a Yid is taka mushish in a lukus higher than the darg of Shleimo Shalom Alam Esech. A Yid's mushish in Atzmos that's higher than this Shleimo Shalom Alam Esech also. I mean, it's not that the idea Mechira is nishki stir hey. That's what's in there. I'm just saying that this is what the Rebbe is saying here is even when we're speaking about the concept of Milas. There's milas the way they're opposite, milas the way they're all the malam nasir. And but the Rambam read, the Shaila of Yediyah of Bchira, why is it a stir about the Rambam read Yediyah the way it is opposite? Ela meiv nadover. Versteht the meaning? Huh?
You said the Rebbe goes through this.
The Rebbe is not the case of this one. The Rebbe is mitvar. What's the pshat in the Rambam? What does Rambam want? He doesn't answer. So why is he saying? Why is he asked the question and give answer? That is chelik amadal. I don't remember which parsha it is. But I'm saying, but in the Fabringans, I think Shmini Toshim above. So I don't know if they brought it here, but the Rebbe brings there that the Kodesh Advarim is, if I'm not mistaken, that a Yid, the Keach Bchira of a Yid is higher than this in of Shleima Shalom Alam Esech. The Etzem is garnish stuff. So don't know the Eibush Ali. The Kavanah of Alakus is there should be a Shleimus. There should be Shleimus Shalom Alam Esechel. There should be Shleimus Hapi Seichel. A Yid's connected to the Kavanah Etzem. So the Shleimus, even the Shleimus Shalom Alam Esechel, can't. The Eibush is not muchach in that Shleimus. It's kind of like still to the Kavanah Etzem. Mitzat Shleimus Shalom Alam Esechel, that the of is mechayiv, so to speak, that he's Yedem Mitzad Atzmi. Mitzad Elokus, the Elokus is higher than Gedarim, higher than Seichel the Gedarim. Mitzad Ein Sof, so it's like we say Ein Keach Chasur Peh. There are certain things that Mitzad the Ein Sof is mechayiv, not Seichel is mechayiv. Ein Sof is mechayiv is Yedei Be'ez. But that's Ein Sof is mechayiv. Atzmos is Garshish mechayiv L'Kavi Atzmos. A Yid's Mushish in the Kavanah Atzmos. It's the same way we say when you get to the Shleimo Shal Pi Seichel. That the Eibush is not mugdil the Shleimo Shal Pi Seichel. Also the Shleimo Shal Alam Seichel are not mugdil them. Only percent have Shleimo Shal Alam Seichel. But the Nish does the Rebbe. I'm just saying the you can wrap the Fabringish, it's all not mugdil the Fabringish. Yeah, but it's not mugdil. They bring only mugdil. Akban, the Elam is tapers the Yonim. This word, why the Yediyah mitzad Ein Sof, the Arzayna Yediyah mitzad Atzmei, so das im Vor ich an andere Plätze. Das ist Indien, it's Indian Dach, I want to say a ganze Indian. I have to think about it. I didn't think about it before coming here. But das was in the Shmuz. Why the Yediyah that the Indian idea the way it is mitzad Seiv mitzad Ein Sof is the idea that's mitzad Atzmei. And not mitzad what's the pshat of the mitzad atzmei? But that's the nekudas advarim. Like upon him, this is all the two dargers that they're saying. Shleimus, Shleimus al Pesach, Shleimus al Mesech. Then there is that Eibush is b'chana together as Shleimus. It's not chazar. Okay. Hara 15 is also. I mean, I mentioned I don't know if he mentioned it, but it's an important Hara 15. Mashkosov bekamon befnim Shloime, Mashkosov bekam Sifrei Yisrael. Yesh lem nois tavakaim bechei kabeir. Kavanos milabeis per kvish tzimtzum es atze begidr aseichel. The Rebbe is not saying. We're not saying that we're saying the Eibush is nimna nem nois meant es nicht that there is no gdarim aseichel. How could there be Gdei Yisrael which says the Eibush is kavayachol limited in the gidr aseichel? Because the Oliver Tzoni, the Eibush is not mugdar anything. Oliver Tzoni that he letzamtzum es atzmi. That he should be Shalom in Gidra Aseichel. And if Oliver Tzoni is as it, what I'm saying is if a lukus, the way we're mitzvah, if a lukus is mufshit, So then you say, the way we understand the Musik of Tzimtzum Api Pashtus, you say, it's the Moshe Rabbi Talmud. The Rab Be'etzim is much deeper than the Talmudim. He could lower his seichel down. So which part of his seichel is mitzumtzum? A lower part of his seichel. But he himself is higher than that. You say, Be'etzim the Eibishter, that's not the, I'm adding a point, but let me just say it anyway. Be'etzim the Eibishter is, his Ein Sof is beyond. If he wants, he could lower himself. I'm not saying he wants to lower himself. The Eibishter himself has no definition. He could be whatever he wants. So what did he want? He wanted on one hand to be about Shleimus Shalom Alim HaSeichel. And Oliver Tzayne that he should be a Shleimus Shal Piseichel. So the Shleimus Shal Piseichel is in Amiti Behechlet. In that aspect that Oliver Tzayne to have Shleimus Shal Piseichel, so Oliver Tzayne of Ein Sof to be a Shalom Al Piseichel. So Meila, it's not that the fact that Olakus is Emes is Mugbal. Oliver Tzayne of Atzmos to be Emes Al Piseichel. So it doesn't weaken the fact that the Eibush is Shalom Al Piseichel. What the Rebbe says here, that's so they're speaking about a darg of, but that darg of tzimtzum is in amiti. Oliver Tzeni of Ein Sof to be in a eifin of that chukes, he should be in the mizgaras of chukes. That's also in amiti. As true as the fact that he's higher than Seif, because even the Shleimus Habligvul is not muchlich. Also is the Kabbalah. Okay, Ara 16 we spoke about already. Oh, now let's see Ara 17 a minute. The Rebbe says here in the Pnim that the idea, the Shleima, the mitzvahs, the mitzvahs of wissen, the Shleimas of Elokus, Milas of Elokus. So the Barbanel teaches Milas Apiseichel, and then Milas Apiseichel. And the Rebbe is saying here that why that idea, the idea of the Shleimas of Elokus Apiseichel, that's not an idea in the Eibishter, because the Eibishter himself is Shleimus Shlomalim HaSeichel, and nicht nur das Shleimus Shlomalim HaSeichel, but is b'chal nicht verbunden with the gather of Shleimus. The whole concept of a perfect, great being is a nischadish yesh mayim. So the Rebbe says in Order 17, L'chein, gam lefi mashchodim tzur mizal hasam asadik sham, the inyan shleimus mitziyusi shal zeh mitzvah munu. Some asadik says there, interessant, some asadik says there, the Babanel frektach, what's the pshat that there's a mitzvah, mizal pissen zayin asadah getlichkeit? L'chor hagas, you mitzvah to know that there's an Eibishter, if you know that, the whole concept, it can't be a mitzvah, there's a mitzvah. You can't say there's a mitzvah to know that there is a mitzvah. So once you know that, once you're accepting mitzvah, you know that there's a mitzvah. So Babanel's masber, the mitzvah is to know that the Eibishter is shalim, and he brings the Vas Bashteit Shleimus, that the Eibishter is independent, everything's dependent on him. But the Tzemach Tzedek says that what the Barbanel says, Eichet is nit shaykh zogin mitzvah of them. Tzemach Tzedek says, since Api Seichel is muchrich, that Elokus is a mechuyev hametzias, is in amiti. You don't need to be mitzav you. There's not once. Sometimes he'll be speaking about a grown up with mitzad basic mitzad seichel amiti, mitzad seichel body. You have to know this Eibishter, and it's a double pasha that the Eibishter means a mechuyev hametzias and a mitzias amitis. Is the shaykh zagen a mitzvah mizal gleiven as a mechuyev hametzias. If you know this Eibishter, b'meli you know this mechuyev hametzias. That's the mashmos of Samal said. Not like what the Rebbe is saying. The Rebbe is saying here that without the Eibishter telling you you should activate your brain, you do whatever the Eibishter says. If the Eibishter didn't tell you to activate, your brain doesn't work at all. But the some tzaddik is saying your brain does. A mensch fährt beschaffen, saying it's ein Kop Arbeit. Sein Kop Arbeit, if he understands his Eibishter, really he's going to, the Seichel is mechayiv is mechayiv. What do you need a mitzvah for that? Anyways, that's a separate shakvatari, but that's not to get. But gam so we touch on tzaddik mitzvah one of those. Not that a person, the mitzvah is nicht, man soll sich hereintrachten in the Shleimus Shal Piseichel. Man soll sich hereintrachten that the Eibishter is higher than Seichel. That's what someone said. Before the mitzvah, the person, his awareness of Elokus is according to what a Seichel is mechayiv. And the mitzvah is also, you should come to the recognition that the Eibishter is higher and you cannot understand it. That's the mitzvah. So according to the Tzemach Tzedek, so the idea Shel Achri mitzvah is higher than the idea Shlifnei mitzvah. So in terms of what the Rebbe is saying, since we're saying that Asr is not moved together of Shleimus altogether, and the idea was Mahat Eder, so the other mitzvah, the Rebbe's idea before the mitzvah, is the idea in Atzmos, so Mela verstandig that it's higher than even the idea that is mitzvah, the shit that someone said. I think I'm going to say for someone said the Inyan Shleimus mitzvah is Shal Zeh mitzvah Munu. He lay in the Becheva mitzvah Mishkas Barbanel. Because there was someone says that's self-understood. Ki'im shu yizbarach Haram v'niskav l'mayla madrigas ha'chachma. But after the kid, hamunish misad atzivu l'matim munish l'fnei. כי גם העניין דרב נזקוף, למעלה, רגע סחר מותר של שלמות. The Eibush is about Ilui. His Ilui is higher than the Ilui the way it is in Seder Dach. Who can I say with Kolam? As in the Monish Lifnat Sibbe he bats Mrs. Word. There's some, but Dort and Taisel Shleis, where the Rebbe says here that the Shleimel Shal Piseichel is not Muchrich B'chol. The Rebbe is saying here Vart Neise. The Ilui Velokus is not defined by Seichel, and the second thing is that mitzad the Darg of Seiviv, we don't need the Mailah song. He's not Muchrich the Mailah B'Mailah. Shana Nandabar. What's the meaning? This comment, I mean, the Rebbe speaks Mefurish. The dogma that the Rebbe brings in the Sikh Mefurish is we saw that when they get to the Shaykh Damuna, when they get to Tanya. The Rebbe says in Tanya, you learned that, yeah? The Rebbe says in Tanya that the fact that the Nivras told you with Varavai is because Yishma'ayin is Machriach, that the mitzvah is always totally in the Varavaya, because the cloud is that every mechadish is always every mechudish is always dependent on the mechadish. So the Rebbe says here that it's not a hechrich, because the Eibush is not defined by Gidra Seichel. At Biseichel, Yeshma'ayin is machaya that the yesh is always dependent on the fact that the ayin is mahavir. That's at Biseichel. The Eibush can b'shafin shalei at Biseichel, nish mucher in Gidra Seichel. So in Meile, while Eibush nish mucher in Gidra Seichel, so kol Seichel are not machaya the Gabi Lukus. So what's the bring out of here that the guy with the end of this the Alter Rebbe's hechre, the Sabbath Midis is hechre hapiseichel. Seichel is not. It doesn't. Seichel mitzad atzmi doesn't define the lukus. There's something else. L'payel olibert tzayne. There's a pasuk el mashal b'rachin tzvashamayim. So we have a raya from the pasuk that the Eibush has mahave velt and ha'efin that the world is always dependent on him. That it's the varavai is always in the nibur. So we have a raya from Torah that the Eibush has mit Samsung given that he should be beire al pi klal yaseichel. Al there the Ramam knows from somewhere that the Eibush has mit Samsung given to be a deya al pi seichel. The concept of idea the way it is al pi seichel. But the Rebbe says it's not like we have a cloud that every single concept. We know that every concept is there's the Oliver saying that it should function the way it is al pi seichel. Every practice, in there's Shloime, those Chekri Yisrael, haben gesagt, that Lechenos Teva Kaim Chekabere, because they understood that in those in Yonah, the Eibush mit Samsung given to function up Yisrael. And al there's when they get this habus. We have a right from the Mashal Baruch Shemayim that Legabi is habus, the Eibush mit Samsung given that this habus should be in Eifin the way the Nabri is, the way it is up Yisrael. And there's when they get the idea the way we see it. We have other Musagim is a Besonderheit. But the Rebbe is not speaking beforish when they get to in the Sikha do to the fact that whether the Gabi Amitasi is what. I don't know if it's said Eizgetash beforish, but the Rebbe says here when they get the idea that I don't know if it says it with the whole Breitkeit that the Rebbe brings over here that mitzad alakush malam yasecho. So this shleimus, the chomash is a lot of tzarich mitzvusei elov. That's a shleimus apiseichel. So that Eibush not muchrin gidra seichel is kenzen asiv. So mitzad alakus, the alakus is lamalam yasecho. It could be that there wouldn't be that chomash is a lot of tzarich mitzvusei elov. He's not mucher to have this mile that his zulas is telling him. So he can't say nishtazeh. But that would be a stirit to the Eibush's achtos. But there's only him. If there's a zulas she'eni tzarich mitzvusei elov. Means that once you created him, once you created him, he's an independent existence. So then there's another reality besides for him. But mitzad, so there is the mashmas. There is mitzad the shleimas of a lukush shalmalam me'aseichel, which higher than seichel. So he could be the achtos is not a stirit to the fact that there's a mitzias, which is any tzarich elov. We verstehen this nicht. But there is a darge where mitzad the atzmos b'chanish tak in ma'il. Even la'achish oliver tzeni the ma'il of achtos, so to speak. Achtos as a shleimus of achtos, but for that achtos is bestätigt in them that there's every mitzias needs him. He's an echad. Same as the Rebbe says the Eibush is a yideh, regardless whether there's a mitzias to know or not. He's a yideh. He's an echad, and the meila is not dependent on the reality altogether. Whether the reality suits that or not, that doesn't define his achtos. So that's a yideh. Saying it's a fighter. I don't know if that's if you learn the different sikhs when they get to the mile of bir nafsh b'hamas. So certain sikhs it came out before this Hadran was said. But if after you look after this Nikud of this Hadran, Azam is start. The Rebbe says that one of the Nyarim when you get to Mivarer Welt that comes out is that the Eibish's Achdus is not dependent on anything. He's Echad, and therefore even a Metzias is going to be it won't be a Stira Echad. Not because there's no Metzias. Even a Metzias Kol Inyan is going to be Achdus. Nicht was nicht da. It's Kamas Sichas al Derazeh. This Eibishter is Echad, and this Echad is Ein Sof. Does Echad mean that there is nothing? His Achdus is not defined by any definitions. How is it expressed? That regardless of what's going to exist, he's going to Sof Kol Sof. He's going to Vetereich Zan Akedis Achdus. Why? Because the Eibishter's Achdus is undefined. You can't define it. The whatever is going to be won't be a Stira to his Achdus. So this can't be defined. It won't be a Stira to his Achdus. Or they themselves will be shaykh to that. So that come a problem in them. Mistake the Nikuda, yeah. Okay, number Zen. Okay, we can see the order 2022. Yes, the Rebbe brings in the Pnim is also an important point. The Rebbe brings in the Pnim that what the Rambam zog the Miyala Ladas Shu Eini Matz. So the Rebbe zog the Alma the Shaila is what's the Rambam said B'miyadame. It's a kefil. The Rebbe touches here. V'miyal das the imyal ala das that the Eibishter is not defined by being. He's not limited. He's not mukted that he has to be in the Nimtzah. Imyal ala das shehu eini matzah. So then you should know that the reality is as kener zayin as it. In the so the Rebbe's nekasha this pshat in imyal das shehu eini matzah with the pshat in Hadran Lamed. Hadran Lamed read the Rebbe that there's two that also over there the Rebbe touches. What's the pshat in hu eini matzah? There the Rebbe speaks that there is the way a lukus is a matzah rishon. The way a lukus is kaviyachol is a mitzansu himself to be a presence according to what Seder Dach considers a reality, mitzias. And then there's the fact that Eibush is matzah shalei mitzias. He doesn't exist within with the concept of existence that seichel is mechayiv existence. He's a eini matzah. We use the word matzah because we have no other word to be sheil aheder aside when we say that he exists. But he doesn't. But his existence is not this type of existence that we're mitzayir existence. Matzah b'lev mitzias. Rizagner is paran. Just this. We have no other way to say that he's not. I say heder. How do you say heder? That he's not as there's nishto. But he's not faran in the concept of faran that exists by Nifrei. That's the Rebbe teaches Vimyal Aladash. The Eibush is higher than Gedera Mitzias. Eibazay, there's no necessary from Nifrei. That's the Rebbe there. The fact that there's a Mitzias of Velt is because the Eibush was a Mitzam result to be a Mocker for Mitzias, and that's only Mitzad the Darg of Matzidish. Mashigim Mitzad Darg of any Mitzad the Eibush is higher than Gedera Mitzias. Mitzad that Darg there's no necessary of Velt. A different type. But the Rebbe wants to connect these two types in it. The Eibush Pirish al Rambam can make it. But Hadran and Al Sham Pirish al Rashid. You must well leave it as she's Baruch Lamadim Knas Matz. In the Gedera Matz. יש לך שני פירושים, בשואף שזה סבב דברים שירים מצא בנמצאים, ובעיקר זה בחינת דיני מצא. Okay, then we get to do הערות 23 also. It's a spät nach, הערות 23. It's a hemshech to the that we already sounded in. We'll just do the beginning, because the hemshech is another word which we need, which is connected to Sif Ches. The last ket of this art is into Sif Ches. The mitzvah is like tzedek sham. The mitzvah Samuna Shuhi is Baruch HaRambam, this of the Maila Maida and Regis Achach. Wehem Shechinin Shem Mash, Mash Mafarish Kim Edas HaRambam. Churi Yuksha, the HaRambam, because there's a mitzvah related to Shematzri Shemamzikol Nimtza, so in Yonam of Seichel, in Yonam of the Yonam of Mamzikol Nimtza, not that the Eibush is Lamaila Megeder Achach. Heichav Shalfash Edas HaRambam, mitzvah Samuna Shuhi is Baruch HaRambam Niska. And the Rebbe's Mazim before the whole Rambam's Meram is to the Shloime of the Barbanel. So Shkaz Befnim, the fact that the Rambam brings in a separate halacha, Rayis to the fact that the Eibush is emes, so what's linked in the Rambam? That without a pasuk in Torah we don't know anything. The fact that Al Pi Seichel is emes, Seichel is not kevei what the Eibush is. Torah has to say that. So the Prat Zeba mitzvah because Rambam halacha bezeh blachadal. We're going and now Shaz Ebazei. Why doesn't the Rambam begin with it? That's the Rebbe Shadi here. We're going to see that. Why doesn't if the truth is that Seichel is not kevei, why does the Rambam start speaking about the concept of Elokus Al Pi Seichel? The Rambam said the Eibush is a Motzir Rishon, he's a Mechayiv Mitzias, everything's dependent on him. And the Rambam brings all the Rayas Al Pi Seichel. And then he says in Halacha Dalid, you should know that Seichel is not Keveh. So Rambam should know to begin with said. Kosev Atera Hashem Elokim Emes. And what's the Pshat Emes? So that Rebbe's Mimazir, the point is, if the Rambam would have to begin with say that the Eibush is beyond Seichel, therefore we need Psukim, but it's nicht angehört the Ili of Afla of the Eibush. Or to say it, the Rebbe say different words, but you wouldn't get the point, basically. First, you have to understand how Piseichel is Muchrich on Metzias Amitis. To understand wie heichs, so to speak, the Shleimas al Piseichel is. And how much it's Mechuyev al Piseichel that a Beira has to be Mechuyev on Metzias. How could it be otherwise? How could it be that an Eibush should not be Mechuyev on Metzias? It should be Piseichel, on verstehen good, how we won't be able to understand otherwise. And Afal became the Eibush is not defined by Seder. Then you appreciate what's the Pshat Mazak the Bar Eibush there. The Rambam Chatchila say we don't know anything. We have to look at Psukim. So then there would be no what's angehört the fact that the Eibush is higher than Seder. The fact that the Eibush is an etzem. The Rambam doesn't. That the fact that the Eibush is higher than Gidra Seder. Okay, that we're gonna have to see because that's going to get to the Hemshech.